From the makers of Spiders Will Eat Your Face comes The Animal Saga, 3 films including Spiders Will Eat Your Face, Hamsters, The History, and Goldfish Bowl, Death by Glass. All this pet history on Amazon and BigWeasel.Club.
Hey guys, it's Joe, and if you've heard the podcast before, you're probably like, what's this? What's happening right now? Well, it's a new type of intro that we thought we would try out. It's just to keep you guys up to date with everything that's happening here. It's something that I can do while Mike gets ready to export our audio in video episodes, available anywhere podcasts are found and on YouTube as well. I promise I'll keep these as short as possible. I just wanted to remind you guys that, like I said before, it's a new year. We're going to be doing 2018 films from here on out, so get ready for that. We got the Handies out. It's our very own film award ceremony. So go and check that out on our YouTube or on our website, howmanyfingerspodcast.com. While you're there, the number one way that you can support our podcast is to go and check out our merch. We got stickers, we got t-shirts, we got koozies. It's all incredibly cheap, and it's a way to not only support the podcast, but represent the podcast. Our first episode here of the new year is going to be our review of Annihilation. Originally, it was going to be Black Panther, but we're unfortunately experiencing some technical difficulties with that episode. So yeah, just wanted to keep you up to date on all of that, and let's just get right into the episode.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the podcast. And this week, we're reviewing Annihilation.
AKA, what will happen to our livers if we continue to do this podcast?
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring 2 guys getting Evan Vinjamori 2006 to 2014 and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And thank you to Max Dermingian, who left that for us on Facebook.
That cryptic synonym on Facebook that only those that know Evan Vinjamori best will fully understand. Evan Vinjamori is obviously a former guest on the podcast on the Rogue One episode,
he was,
I believe. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then Max Dermingian, also a former guest from the Doctor Strange and the Star Wars The Last Jedi episodes. 2 Star Wars boys there. So go check those episodes out for a look inside the minds that created that synonym that we're all a little bit confused by. But let's get into some beer, and we can talk about the long week we've had, because this week we're drinking Philadelphia Pale Ale from Yards Brewing Company.
Yeah, can you tell there's just you're really just seeing like this shell of Mike and Joe right now. We've had I'm sure we'll talk about it. This will come out 2 weeks from now. But it's just this. But yeah, the Handies did not come out when we planned, which was the Friday before the Spirit Awards.
I hope by the time this comes out, the Handies are
Jesus
out.
Christ, I sure do.
Well, if the Handies are out, then this won't be out.
Oh, right, yeah, of
when
course.
It comes out.
But what had happened was...
so we filmed the Handies like a week before they were supposed to come out, to give myself like a week to edit them. And I was editing hard throughout the entire week, and then it got to be like the Friday, like the day the Handies were supposed to come out, and we ended up I had a snow day from work that day, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna bang out the rest of the Handies tonight, so I don't have to stay up late when I get home from work, finishing them in time. And then where I am in Bangor, we were predicted 2 to 4 inches of snow, if that.
Right.
It wasn't we didn't get a severe storm warning. It was winter storm advisory. They're the roads are going to be a little bad. Be careful.
Right.
And where I was working, they had a severe storm warning. They're the winds are going to be crazy. You're going to get 6 to 10 inches of snow. There's going to be a lot of rain that's going to make the trees very heavy. So there's going to be a lot of broken branches. Power is going to go out. Basically, just prepare for the worst. But we weren't getting that predicted by us, and then all of a sudden the predictions shifted, and we were also getting that by us, and the power went out at like 11 a.m. and never came back on. It's still not back on. This is on Sunday that we're recording this.
Right.
So for like 48 hours we've been without power where I am. Joe fortunately got power back today.
Yeah, it was we spent, again, my power went out only a few hours after Mike's, and it came back on again 2 days later at 4 a.m. this morning. Mike and I were talking about it. It felt like we're in the fallout, some sort of weird natural disaster. I was like sleeping on a friend's floor last night and like just trying to go anywhere really to charge my cell phone, or just nothing is spookier than going through your own house with like a flashlight, kind of like.
I have like a headlamp that I wear for like camping and stuff. And I was telling Joe, it felt like I was in like a video game. It's just like there's light wherever you look, and you're like fumbling through drawers. Like, are there batteries in here? Are there crackers we can eat?
So we would have loved to have the handies out for you by now. For those of you who are listening for the first time, the handies are a film award ceremony that we do annually. But we'd love to have those out for you right now, but we'd also love to be able to charge a cell phone to take a warm shower.
So hopefully they will be out after the Oscars. So now we are the last film awards ceremony of the year. So I guess we're more important than the Oscars now.
Yeah. Final say, I guess.
Oh boy.
We do want them to be special. We want to take, They should have been done though.
That's the thing. I was like coming around like home stretch. I was like really in like a groove with editing them. They were looking beautiful. They were hilarious. I was just like really in love with everything that we put into these. I was so excited for everyone to watch them, and I just haven't been able to have a computer that works to edit them. And unfortunately, everything's on my desktop too, so I can't like edit it on my laptop that we have here.
And we have really good timing. Like, we filmed the weekend before. We were gonna have it out the Friday before, like just to get everyone in the mood for the award ceremonies or whatever. Whatever. I want to stop talking about it. Let's get into the Annihilation.
I cry thinking about it.
Oh, by the way, this is a good beer.
Yeah, this is
good.
It was very cheap too.
Yeah. Okay.
$8.99. So I went for that one immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully they are out now. If they are, go back and watch them. We put a lot of time into them. I think you guys will enjoy them. If this is your introduction to the podcast, looking for Black Panther last week or Annihilation this week, and you came across us, go check out the handies. It's a little bit of what we're about. That's what you can look forward to at the end of the film year 2018, which we are on our second movie of now.
And these are the second annual handies. We have one that we made last year,
2017,
as well,
yeah.
Just as goofy and funny. And we'll also be doing Oscar
wrap up
tonight, so you can go out or you can stay in and you can listen to that if you want to hear our thoughts on how the Oscars
2 weeks ago by now.
Yes.
But yeah, Joe, you want to give me that IMDb description? I'll run through my very scant mic notes since I haven't had a computer to
Oh no, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, a lot of this is going to be
off the cuff.
Yeah. Okay.
You ready? Had to prepare yourself.
Had some gas. So the IMDb description for Annihilation is a biology signs up for a dangerous... Biology. A biologist signs
We're all
up...
just biology when you think about it.
A biologist... Can you tell that I just have a few hours of
sleeping on a floor?
Yeah. Like literally living... Picture living in your house when it's like 30 degrees.
Yeah.
Just enduring an entire weekend of that. A biologist signs up for a dangerous, secret expedition where the laws of nature don't apply.
That's not bad.
It's not. It is what it is.
Maybe a name. It's short enough where you could spare a name.
Yeah.
Or maybe a group of women.
Right, yeah.
There's other characters. I don't know. But Annihilation is based on the 2014 novel of the same name by Jeff Vandermeer. And it was written and directed by our boy Alex Garland, who has previously directed. And well, let's go. He's got more writing credits. Let's go through the writing credits. He wrote the novel For the Beach, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie from 2000. He wrote 28 Days Later, The Tesseract. He wrote the novel. Sunshine. He wrote. He wrote the TV series Batman, or one episode for Batman Black and White. He wrote the movie screenplay for Never Let Me Go, which was based on that book. Forget when that came out. He wrote the video game Enslaved: Odyssey to the West, the screenplay for Dread, the video game Devil May Cry, and then he wrote one of our favorite movies of all time, Ex Machina.
Which is his directorial
debut, yeah. So he's directed that and then this. So just those two directed under his credits. And then he's been announced to be writing the original screenplay for Halo. And as Joe and I just said before we started recording, it was nice knowing you, Alex Garland, because the Halo screenplay is the kiss of death.
Yes, yeah.
Who's been attached to it? Like Peter Jackson. What has he really done since like King Kong? And even that was like bad. And then what's his name? The guy who did, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
District 9.
Neil Blomkamp.
Blumkin.
Yeah.
Neil Blumkin.
And he's put out some great material since District 9.
And then what do we got? We got. There's a cast. There's people that are in this movie. I'll tell you who they are in just a second. We have Natalie Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gina Rodriguez, Tessa Thompson, who, for the entirety of like the time the trailer was in theaters, I was like, that looks like Tessa Thompson, but that's not her. And then it wasn't until I was like actually watching it on screen, I was like, no, that is fucking Tessa Thompson.
Right, yeah.
Tuva Novotny, Oscar Isaac, Benedict Wong, Sonoya Mizuno, and David Gyasi as Daniel. And all right, no, I don't want to say that. That's a spoiler. There's other people in this, but I'm not going to talk about it.
Right, yeah.
And then the only other thing I really want to talk about in terms of notes was just the release of this was kind of weird. The film was released by Paramount Pictures in the United States on February 23rd, 2018. Due to a poorly received test screening, David Ellison, a financier at Paramount, became concerned that the film was too intellectual and too complicated and demanded changes to make it appeal to a wider audience, including making Portman's character more sympathetic and changing the ending. Producer Scott Rudin sided with Garland in his desire to not alter the film, defending the film and refusing to take notes. Rudin had final cut, so it stayed as the way that Garland wanted it. But then, as sort of a compromise, on December 7, 2017, it was announced that due to the clashes between Rudin and Ellison and the shift in Paramount's leadership, a deal was struck with Netflix handling international distribution. According to this deal, Paramount will handle the US and China release, while Netflix will begin streaming the film in other territories 17 days later. A week later, Garland expressed disappointment with the Netflix release, stating, "We made the film for cinema. I've got no problem with the small screen at all. The best genre piece I've seen in a long time was The Handmaid's Tale, so I think there's incredible potential within that context. But if you're doing that, you make it for that medium and you think of it in those terms. Right. Look, it is what it is. The film is getting a theatrical release in the States, which I'm really pleased about. One of the big pluses of Netflix is that it goes out to a lot of people and you don't have that strange opening weekend thing where you're wondering if anyone is going to turn up, and then if they don't, it vanishes from cinema screens in 2 weeks. So it's got pluses and minuses, but from my point of view and the collective of the people who made it, it was to be seen on a big screen."
Yeah, it is strange because we have like this sci-fi movie that's directed by this well-respected sci-fi writer and director that's headlined by an Academy Award winner, and the studio sells off the international rights before it even premieres. Like, that was weird, and I think it's fair for maybe everyone involved in the film to feel insulted. I think it's fair for, fans like you and me and other movie fans and people who like his work and liked Ex Machina, but it also made like 11 million its opening weekend, so I think it's fair. And then
I would be mad if it went on Netflix in the United States.
Oh yeah, that would be.
But I think when it comes to the international distribution of a movie like this, I think American audiences will already have problems understanding what's going on in here.
Right.
I myself had some problems understanding exactly what happens when the crazy ending of this movie that we'll get into starts happening. There's a lot that's sort of like left for interpretation, and I think if you're someone who doesn't speak English and you're reading subtitles, there'll be parts that you might think like, is that just bad translation? Or is that what's actually going on? Or did I miss something? Or did something get lost somehow? Right. I think it would, when you're looking at something in terms of it was translated or it was dubbed, I think it might make audiences doubt what they actually saw. Yeah. Because watching it in my native tongue, I was still like, is that, like, did I miss something? Because something feels like it's not totally adding up with the ending of this movie.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just kind of disappointing. I mean, I know Paramount had like a real shitty year last year. I don't think anything. They released a ton of movies last year. They're all pretty different, but I don't think any of them made a profit, really. Mm-hmm. So they're definitely thinking with their gut. What makes me sad is if Paramount is business smart, I don't think they're going to do sci-fi anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have this, which is probably going to be a big loss. We had last year's Life, which bombed. We reviewed that. Go check that out. I think they got ahead of them. I think they got ahead of...
I think it was easy to think that sci-fi was in.
Right. But
after films like Arrival, like being nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, definitely. And they put out Arrival. Mm-hmm. And they put out 10 Cloverfield Lane. So they had like this kind of good 2016, I guess. But then they just got in front of the whole Cloverfield paradox thing. I think that's where like they were just like, sell to Netflix. We don't want to release this in theaters. And then also they did Ghost in a Shell. So they're just like, fuck, man. Like, what do you... Yeah, they were just like, it would be a really smart business decision if they were just to be like, we gave this sci-fi thing a go, didn't we? Like maybe we shouldn't. And that makes me sad. But it's a fucking punishing box office world out there. I just sent this to like a group chat that we're in. This past summer, or this past year, was the worst that the box office has done in like 30 years or something. Mm-hmm. So it's not looking great for movie theaters. It's not looking great for
I feel like it's like they put out these big tentpole films, but rather than like, if you think of the image of a tentpole, rather than it canopying over all the other small films, it's like a tentpole, and then like there's nothing supporting it on the other ends, and it's just like everything gets left outside of that canvas. And if you're not a Marvel film, if you're not a Star Wars film, if you're not a big franchise film, like who's really going to see your movies? Like,
right, yeah,
it's weird, especially now that now. As much as like we kind of hate to see stuff transfer over to Netflix in that way, that kind of is the place to release stuff like that, because it's there for a long time. You don't rely on, like he's saying, like everyone's seeing it within 2 weeks or you're done. Mm-hmm. You can put it out there and like it could become a cult film if enough people happen to watch it on Netflix, because there are those people that just like scroll around and are like, oh, this looks cool, I've heard nothing about it, let me put it on, it's on Netflix.
There is a problem though too, where like selling the Cloverfield paradox doesn't say good things about Netflix.
Well, it is starting to turn into like
it's starting to get the straight to DVD or VHS connotation kind of thing. Yeah. So I don't know.
Unlike that, I feel like people who don't go out and buy DVD, like even back then, it was still just kind of like, oh, okay, maybe it's in the bargain bin at Walmart for a couple bucks.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas even that, like, stuff that could be horrible and is on Netflix, people still watch it on Netflix.
But yeah, let's talk about this movie. Or let's talk about Ex Machina, too, because that was our favorite film of... What did that come out? 2014?
It was in the 2015 Oscars.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't review it because that was when we did like 16 movies our first year, 2015, because we came in at like November. So we were really just getting out like some of the big blockbusters and then all the Oscar movies after that. And it won Best Special Effects at the 2015 Oscars, even though I think it came in like early in the 2015 year.
Yeah, it was a tight concept, some really riveting performances. It had a really nice kind of message about our society. It was very cold, very direct movie, which I think a lot of this movie is not. This is not a tight concept.
Ex Machina was like big concept, but not too big concept. Like it was something that could be handled very easily between essentially three characters.
Right.
There's maybe 4 or 5 actors, but 3 characters.
Right.
As far as we're concerned. And when you have something like that tight, like there's a twist at the end of Ex Machina, and it works because of how tight that whole concept is. When there's only 3 characters, we understand them all fully. Everything that it makes sense, the way everything plays out in that movie, and the twist is allowed to just be this really cool thing that's like, oh fuck, like I can't believe I just watched that. Like,
right. Yeah.
And it ends up like culminating in this really big climax. This I think is a little less so. It's a bigger budget, I think. I'm assuming.
Oh, definitely. That was like 15.
Just based on the cast alone.
Yeah, that was like 15 million. This is like 50 million.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's the special effects in Ex Machina. They won the Oscar because it was kind of like, not that they didn't push themselves. They created stuff that like hadn't been done before.
Right.
But it was like kind of focused on like one thing. It was like, how do we make this robot look cool? They essentially won for...
It was contained. It
being
was
able
small,
to create like these like transparent portions of her legs and arms and stuff that were still moving around like she was this, synthetic human thing. And she would have like this weird looking like skin that looked synthetic, even though it was her real skin,
Right.
through the special effects. And like, they were doing stuff that hadn't been done before, but it was like focused on one thing, whereas this is kind of spread out upon, like, there's a bunch of different visual things they have to get across in this. And I mean, just to start off, I personally feel like the cinematography got kind of left in the wayside of this. I haven't looked up who actually shot this movie yet. That'd be something to look up. It seems like someone that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of experience shooting with VFX.
Okay.
Like, I feel like they were so concerned about like leaving enough space for VFX to happen that they forgot about like, well, you also got to make the movie look good. Like, you can't just leave everything on the studio. There's a couple shots where there's not a lot of VFX that look good, like when she's standing in front of like the burning, flames of everything, and there's like the silhouette. That's some nice shots, but there's a lot of other shots that are like really low contrast, just like poorly color graded, in my opinion, and it's just got a weird look to this movie. Whereas like Ex Machina was like just really tightly color graded and shot.
I think I really like the colors in this film. I mean, I know you're not saying you completely don't like the. I mean, the shimmer is something to behold, kind of. I mean, again, but that's VFX.
Well, a lot of times when they have the shimmer in there, they have low contrast everywhere else, and I think that might be conceptual at some parts, like when they're like standing on like the base, sort of like looking out at the shimmer. The whole thing is like blown out. Oh yeah, but it just looks bad.
They're also always. I mean, it starts. I mean. I don't know, ever since, so we have Natalie Portman, she's this professor at Johns Hopkins or whatever, and she's like a biology teacher or something, or like cellular biology.
Genetic.
Okay.
Something biology, yeah.
Yeah, but then, yada, 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 her husband is missing in action. Oscar Isaac comes home or whatever, and then immediately they kind of start doing something more aesthetically pleasing, where they're shooting like through that glass a lot, the glass of water on the table, and that's really cool. And then they keep shooting through glass, so they'll shoot through the shimmer, and sometimes it does look like really weird shots. Like there's a point where they're like looking at the reflection of like them in like Area X or whatever. But you can also see like the shimmer. I don't know. It's just they shoot a lot through like different glass
transparent,
and
like
transparent.
Through the plastic around his hospital.
Yeah,
bed
I do like
point.
that too. But yeah, no. When you were talking about, or have we talked about this on air yet? That like the book, like I heard something that like maybe 15 or 20% of the book actually makes it into the film.
Yeah, I mean. After like me and my girlfriend got out of this movie last night, we were just kind of like, did we miss something? Like, I don't think we missed anything, but the ending was not fully adding up for us. Okay. Like it seemed like I had too much faith in Alex Garland to be like, is that really what he wanted us to walk away with from the ending? I must have missed something. Right. There's people reviewing this movie who are like calling it a masterpiece, which like I took as like pretty high praise, because like I feel like when you have like pull quotes that are used in trailers, if it's something like best film of the year, best film of the summer, like that's something that's like easily pulled out of a review that's maybe not as positive, or just like something that's thrown around. But they don't say like masterpiece when like an Avengers movie comes out or Star Wars. Yeah. That's something that's not thrown around as much. So there was kind of high expectations for this movie, and then the ending happened, and I was kind of like, are people like seeing the same thing that I'm seeing? So we were looking up the plot to the book to see if there's some like I hadn't heard that it was 10 to 15% from the book. Okay. And as we're reading through the plot of the book, we're like, this is nothing like the movie that we've seen. There's some like really key elements of the book that are completely changed for the movie. The ending is totally different in the book from the ending in the movie.
Yeah, I heard a snippet from an interview of Alex Garland where I think he read it once or something and then didn't remember it really at all, and kind of like again, he wanted, I don't know, this sounds like he's kind of like full of it, but like reads it once, kind of is like, okay, I have it in my head, and kind of almost in like a dream-like remembering it, wrote the screenplay and never like made contact again with the book. And so I thought that was weird. And again, I don't know, I didn't look up the summary of the book. When you were just talking about critics, I just realized I don't know what any critics thought of this at all. I just know it did terrible at the box office. But yeah, that's That's interesting.
I mean, it had a pretty good score on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was like 86%.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw that.
Which seems pretty high for, like, usually I feel like movies like this where it's a weird fucking ending, people will give it like a 50% because half of, I mean, maybe the audience is a 50%, but usually like half of like the people are like, yeah, like what did I just fucking walk out of? And then there's the other people who like were really paying attention, are like, oh no, you just walked out of a masterpiece. Like,
I feel like I don't know. Let's keep discussing it. But yeah, just broader thoughts. Again, this was not as tight of a storytelling as Ex Machina. I didn't really connect emotionally with Natalie Portman. Like it wasn't until late in the game. Maybe there's a point where she kind of like doubles over in the woods and she's like crying from like some sort of flashback. I mean, the Helplessly Hoping or whatever, that one Crosby, Stills and Nash song, like that's like one of my favorites. And that scene, or just every time they like listen to that, or just there was something like really great with whoever mixed that audio or the surround kind of sound with like that specific scene where you can just hear the record player kind of like upstairs playing it, and you'll like the camera will be downstairs. Like there was something really great about that gave me like chills or whatever. And that song was like a really
what's the one lyric in that song? Because they like end on that one lyric and it makes more sense later, and it's like one becomes two, or like it's basically like, yes. I mean, because they start off with that whole sort of metaphor of like cells dividing, and we all sort of came from the same cell at one point. We're all sort of connected.
Where the chorus is like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's like they are two together. They are like meant for each other or something. I can't exactly remember the lyrics. There was one point where they get a little too literal, and it's like, look towards the stairs, something you're not expecting. It's like Oscar Isaac like comes back from the dead, basically. Like I was just kind of like, okay, that's a little too on the nose.
This was also like, I guess because they sort of reveal later, like we know that he goes away on missions and he's gone for a long time sometimes, and we're sort of fuzzy about like the timeline of this one. Like when they say like it's been like a year, because like she sees the one other professor, Dan, early in the movie, and he's like, what's her name? What is Natalie Portman's character's name?
Lena,
yeah. He's like, Lena, like, it's been like a year. Like, you're allowed to go to a barbecue. We're assuming that she already knows that he's dead, and it's been like a year. Or like, and then it's not till like later that we find out that like, basically she didn't know where he was for that whole time. For 6 months of it, she was like, calling, trying to get information from the State Department or whoever who runs the mission that I guess he's a part of, trying to get any kind of information about, is he coming back, is he killed in action, whatever. And then she stops calling after that, and it's basically just for the last 6 months she assumes he's dead from that. But either way, like I was expecting like more of a reaction when he like walks in. Like,
well, yeah, I guess so. There was
I mean, there is like there's a bit of a time jump where like
there's some weird chemistry, like,
but that time jump later on I makes sort of less sense, because like he's obviously very off in the beginning.
They just go downstairs, I assume. Like is that the time jump? Like just from the bedroom to they're talking in the kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what happens during then, but
I assume they literally just go down. She's like, you need a.
We got a boy here.
Yeah, we gotta. We're gonna take a real quick break.
We'll be right back. And we're back. Let our good boy Ken in, who was on last week's episode of Black Panther. So go check that out, or just check Ken chilling in the corner of the screen right now. You can see me.
And speaking of fucked up time,
we were talking about the passage of time when he first arrives at the house, and then they just show up downstairs. And I don't know, I just thought it was weird where like he's been gone for like 12 months. She thought he was dead for at least half of that. And she just, I mean, they have like sort of an emotional reaction. I expected her to be like more weirded out by how like unhappy he seems to see her, or not happy to see her.
Well, I mean, yes, but yes and no, because they have the luxury of being like, he was in the military. He has no idea where I was kind of surprised she wasn't. She was definitely desperate for answers, but I was surprised how like not sympathetic she was. Kind of like, oh, we can talk about this later. Where then she like kind of brings him downstairs, and like the conversation continues, or she's still like pressing him like, what happened? Kind of,
Yeah.
you know, and then obviously he starts to, I don't know. He takes a drink from his glass, and then there's blood left in the glass, and then
I don't feel very well.
Yeah, he don't feel real good. But yeah, so then this is another thing that I thought was kind of weird. So then she calls an ambulance. They're in the back of the ambulance. They're taking him to the hospital, and then we are introduced to this sort of society, or not society, but this kind of government. You see, I don't even really know what it was, and it's really hard not to compare this film to Arrival, just because they're so similar. But in Arrival, like, you got a kind of grasp of like this big entity government, or like government installation kind of like, okay, well, we're here to handle this kind of situation. Where like I didn't, like, when they pull over the ambulance, I was like, okay, I'm on board, kind of. Like, they're interfering with like this normal kind of protocol. And then they take him there, and she's speaking to like a psychologist, kind of. And I was just
they didn't kind of like, in Arrival, they do a good job of sort of showing you the process of everything. They show you how like regimented and, you know, like strict this whole, and, you know, bureaucratic, this whole like government thing that she's going through is.
How the structure of all like government facilities.
In this,
would
it's
work
kind of
together,
like chaos, even though they've been like working on this thing for like 3 years, and like the SWAT teams pull up, they pull over the car, they like, before even like trying to take her in peacefully, they inject her with a sedative, and then she wakes up, and then the first person she talks to is a psychologist, which is weird because the psychologist, they later reveal, is the one who sort of is only really there to screen people who are going to end up going into the Shimmer.
Right.
So like, I don't know why she's the first person there that's interviewing them. Like, why is there not like a military person that's higher up that's sort of like interrogating her? Sort of like the framing of the whole movie is where she's brought back into that contamination room. That's kind of how the movie opens, is she's in that contamination room, and Benedict Wong is interrogating her. I was expecting something more like that when she first arrived. Like, what did he tell you? What did you know the entire time you were trying to get a contact with him? You know, what did you know while he was gone? And rather, like, they just have like the psychologist there who's kind of playing like the baddie at first, which I didn't really like.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, I remember getting like very frustrated with the back and forth of that whole scene, where like she was playing like the baddie in a way that didn't really, like, again, because she's not like the higher up character. She's not really the person who's totally in charge. She's just the person that's screening people that go into the Shimmer.
Right.
So why is she sort of playing that role of like, you know, you're going to ask a question and I'm not going to tell you the answer, and I'm going to say this, and, you know, like, it was just, it was like blue balls conversationally in that whole thing. And in a way that would make sense, like, if that was like the general who was like, you know, what do you know? What are you sniffing around these parts for? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, and then we'll bring you in. She was filling too many roles by the same character. We should have been introduced to her later as they go into the mission or something like that. Or, you know, she's there to psychologically profile her before she volunteers for the mission.
I really don't like, again, since we're kind of like jumping around, and you had just brought up kind of, I don't know exactly what his name was, but the Benedict Wong character, his name was like, I was looking it up. It was spelled like Lomax, like kind of like my last name, but with an X.
Lomax.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure how to say it because I never heard it said out loud in the movie. But I did not like any of those scenes. He was basically playing like this clunky exposition machine, and like, I don't know. And also, like, that being the first thing that happens in the movie, I think, like, is one of those scenes. It's just like,
see, I think that's
how is this movie better from you knowing how it ends before it even begins? Like, there was no real reason to spoil that everyone in the mission dies in the first like minute, really. I feel like that, and I was like, oh, they're going to justify this later. Like, it's going to be a part of like,
I don't
a bigger
like the
thing.
framing like that. I think if that had come at the end, it would have been cooler.
No, yeah. When she goes in,
I think his character is cool. I think Benedict Wong is like severely underrated in Hollywood. I think
most
every
definitely.
role that he's in, like, he just brings this sort of like, he's great for sci-fi.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, he was in The Martian, and he was like one of my favorite parts of The Martian.
Yeah.
There's something about him that's he carries himself very well on screen, and I think he's very intimidating and imposing in his interrogation.
Oh, definitely.
On this, he's got great voice control too. But yeah, there's parts of this movie that are actively ruined by the framing of this movie with that interrogation scene going on.
He like literally never asks a question worth asking either. He's like this really stupid audience surrogate that's asking the dumbest questions that I'm just like, that's not doing anything for me. And it's like, we're dealing with such a high concept here that, I mean, I guess maybe that's all he can do is ask like very rudimental questions, but it's just, I don't know. But yeah, if we want to jump a little more into it, I don't know. I really like Natalie Portman in this movie too. She's got like this. There's some roles I don't like her in, but like I really like her in this because she has like that steely kind of gaze that I think is like really works really well with sci-fi. Mm-hmm. I think she shows like a lot of duality in her performance, like this kind of like strong person, like when they're on their like mission and everything, but very vulnerable, kind of like falling apart at times. And then she's also logical within her profession, but also again can be irrational. Like it was a good balance of like what a human doing this would be for me. I don't know.
See, I think Natalie Portman's fine. I just think the writing is not great for her character. Like I think the order that they reveal stuff, while it might make sort of like logical sense on paper, I think the way it plays out in the movie ends up hurting the movie. Like the way they like, there's sort of like the twist in the movie where it's like, oh, she's got this happy marriage with Oscar Isaac, and then he goes away and she's whatever. And then we've sort of revealed that like she's been having an affair every time he goes away because she feels neglected, and that she has this sort of like self-destructive attitude. And like that's something that would have been more beneficial for us to know earlier in the movie, because it sort of better explains why she actually volunteers to go into the shimmer. Because there's a good portion of the movie where I'm kind of confused, where I'm like, what is she really thinking she's going to accomplish in the shimmer? Like everyone who goes in dies except her husband. Like, and she understands biology, but like, is she like the top biologist in like all of like the nation who can like go into this thing that no one's ever seen before and gather information that they couldn't and make it out alive? Like,
well, I thought
it would have made more sense for her to stay with her husband on the outside, studying him and his, what's going on there.
I think they do.
She knows nothing about what's inside there, so it just seemed like she was signing up for a suicide mission. I don't know. It made more sense when they explained that she does have this self-destructive behavior. But then when they reveal that later, you're kind of like, well, they haven't really established that she's self-destructive other than these acts that we're just finding out about now. So it's kind of like you're trying to make sense of these two different versions of the character that are kind of incongruent. Like,
I don't mind that so much. I kind of thought that popped up at a good time. I think we need some surprises kind of from her personal life if we're going to be cutting this film this way. Also, I think there is an appropriate amount of time in pacing where she's looking at him and she's like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just watching him die. All his vital organs are failing. I think there is something to, like, I'm military trained. You're flagging these people who are like suicidal, like basically to go into this suicide mission. She's like, what do I have to live for besides like this? I'm fucking miserable before he showed up.
I think it also would have made more sense if, like, again, if they had paid more attention to like the bureaucratic military side of it, rather than just like she goes to the psychologist and says, I want to go in. And she's like, oh, yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah, sure, you could tag along. Like,
right.
It should have been more of a struggle of like, that could have been like a more interesting plot point to this too.
Yeah.
Of her wanting to go in and them being like, no, like, who the fuck are you? And her having to convince them that, she's worthy of going in, that she can be an asset to the team.
Right.
I felt like there was a lot of stuff in this movie that was kind of like, they would lay sort of down these threads that I thought were going to have a really cool payoff later. Like when the affair got revealed later in the movie, I was like, oh, okay, so they're kind of trying to do the thing that like Arrival has done, or Interstellar has done, where they've sort of interstitched into the hard sci-fi of it, like these personal moments that are going to make the hard sci-fi make sense more at the end. It sort of comes back, but not in a very obvious way. You kind of have to really dig for the way that ties in. And if you don't pick up on it, you're just kind of like, well, what the fuck did the affair mean for anything? Like, there's not really anything that's picked up on that if you're not really paying attention at the end.
Yeah, definitely. But
there's also like... there's been a lot of like memes about this, but like, there's the whole like meme with like there's someone who posted a picture outside of like Donald Trump's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that was like nothing but respect for my president, and then everyone kind of kept like doing memes for that. And then people have been comparing this to like Ghostbusters because it's like an all-female crew. They kind of look like the Ghostbusters with their outfit going into the shimmer. So then people were posting pictures of this being like nothing but respect for my Ghostbusters. Yes. And like I thought there was something to that like this is like an all-female like sci-fi movie, and I thought they were setting up for something different when they're like having a beer outside on like when she's meeting everyone from the crew, and she's like, oh, like it's an all-female crew, and they're like, no, it's all scientists. Kind of everyone who's tried to go in there before has been a mostly military presence. I thought that was trying to set up for something that I thought was going to be kind of cool, of like, you know, maybe whatever is in the shimmer understands who's coming into it, and you know, when you send these big, you know, macho like violent men into it, they're gonna get chewed up and spit out. But if you send in these more, you know, feminine people who are going in there looking for research rather than to kill and destroy everything in there, they might come out with a different end result. And they kind of just did nothing with that. They're just kind of like, oh no, yeah, we're I don't know why they acknowledged that it was all female if they weren't gonna really do anything with it. Because then it's almost kind of like, okay, then don't say anything. Like, just let them be all scientists.
Right. No matter what, yeah, it's just. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That is a good point, though. But once we do go into the shimmer, I kind of like, I felt like, you know, like as soon as we get to that kind of like swamp shack, you know, the flowers grow, like the different flowers growing together, and the alligator scene, I'm just kind of like, I've seen this all in the trailer. I wasn't totally turned on by that kind of.
See, that stuff, yeah, because
it took like an entire of the movie, like hour of the movie to get to like, I'm sorry, spoiler alert at this point, definitely, but to get to like the bear or like the flower people scenes.
Well, yeah, because the alligator scene is kind of like, it seems like something out of like, there's a better term for this that I'm ignorant of, but like, you know, that type of genre of movie where it's like, I mean, I guess like Jaws is like the first of it, and then you have like Lake Placid and like these movies where it's like a thriller that has to do with like nature, and they're up against this like crazy thing, and they have to sort of outsmart like some sort of big, oversized, crazy creature. Like there's a portion of this movie that feels like that rather than sci-fi. Like it feels like a cheap sort of like thriller, like Lake Placid meets like Alien or something like that. Like that's too much action, like that, and that's what that alligator scene to me felt like.
It's one side of me wants to say that, and one side of me is kind of also like, okay, I kind of like the slow buildup. I kind of like the slow kind of, this place is unholy, and we're all scientists, and this goes against everything we've ever learned, kind of. I like that slow, instead of just like they walked into the shimmer like, whoa, what the fuck? You know, like.
Well, I thought you could accomplish that with that, like they could just be like it was weird enough when she's looking at the flowers and being like, these are different species, but they're growing from the same root and plant, you know, like so they have to be the same species. Like they could have looked at stuff like that, or like looked at more animals like the deer that are non-violent without having to go to like turning it into like an action movie and being like, it just started to feel like a horror movie at a certain point where it was like, how is each person going to die in this movie? And they're going to get picked off one by one. And that's sort of essentially what happens in different ways. It seemed beneath the genre of sci-fi.
But let's start talking about scenes that we liked, because I really love. Well, I was confused by this scene. This is another thing where I thought they were setting up groundwork for something that I never completely understood, or like maybe there wasn't payoff and it was just a strange scene. But so they go to, I guess, their previous base, and they go into the mess hall, and they find like a DV camera or whatever, and there's this very like, it's super spooky and unsettling, but just an almost like, they start playing the DV tape, and it's like an almost giddy Oscar Isaac, kind of like soothing / like cutting open another member of like his research team, and to reveal like something that's like moving inside of the guy's abdomen, like where his intestine should be. It almost looks like snake-like kind of, and he like even puts his hand kind of between it
and feels it,
and he just like looks back at the camera like it's his dad on the beach, and he's a kid. He's like, look what I found. Like, it's just like, I'm like, why is he smiling? Like, it kind of like, it gives them like a false flag of kind of like they went insane, kind of. And I couldn't
I
really...
do think they are trying to set up that because they do have the other people who watch it misunderstand that.
Right.
But I also hated them misunderstanding it. And it's also like the way they set that up too. Because like the one person, I can't remember the other crew members' names.
They were in there for
Gina
a
Rodriguez,
year, and
she's she's watching the DV, and she's like, okay, turn it off. Like, fuck that shit. Like, now we know that the two possibilities were that they got eaten by something, or killed by something, or they went insane and killed each other. And she's like, now we know they killed each other. And the other people are trying to be like, well, no, like there's something in there. There was something moving around that clearly wasn't their intestines. And she tries to like write it off. And she's like, no, like I was like an EMP or an EMT or whatever. And like, you know, it's just a trick of the light. Like, you know, you can see it's shock. It's weird stuff.
Right.
Like it just seemed like a really flimsy, thin excuse from like trying to steer them away from that. And I also didn't understand why she would be trying to steer them away from what she actually saw. You know what I'm saying?
You
like
know what you're going into. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Like they all knew they were going to see some weird shit, and I guess like they're probably their justification for it is that like she herself is in shock and is denying what she's seeing because she doesn't want to believe that.
Right.
But I don't know. That just seemed weird. She was one of the more gung ho members of the crew, and then she's immediately just like, no. Like I was an EMT. Like that's clearly like I can't believe that she would see what we saw and think that it was real. And so I can't believe why she would lie either to the rest of the crew and try to convince them that they didn't see that. Like it was it felt like they were trying to split the crew up in a way that didn't really make sense.
Because then later that night, again, and you can see what they're kind of setting up for, because she's a strong personality. They set it up for later that night when
Cass.
Who's taken away?
Cass.
Okay.
Cass Shepard.
I thought, Shepard. That's what I'm thinking of.
Her first name's Cass, yeah.
But Shepard gets kind of taken away. She's the first like victim of that bear or whatever. And then it later comes up. They're kind of like, did that really happen, or did you like kill? Like, you know, she becomes paranoid. She kind of goes crazy. I don't know. It was a little.
It was like a manufactured point of like contention that it just didn't seem natural. I was starting to lose a little bit of interest at that point. And again, like they have like some parts that are like really cool and creepy. Like when they follow Ventress down into like the pool and they find the location of the video that they just watched, and they see that like the guy has sort of fused with the like lichens and like you know, sort of mold and whatever that's growing on the wall in this weird way that eventually like ended up killing him. And like that's like a really creepy like set piece right there, because it's almost like this like disemboweled throne of like nature and like certain parts of like this man. Like it's something out of like a horror movie that's like really creepy. And I don't know, like it just seems weird to set up that her disagreeing with the tape when like she would see that and then immediately be like, oh yeah, like they didn't do that to him. Like something's going on here. But she never like kind of like recants what she said before. So why have her say it at all? Like I don't know, it was just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, but then we get into some really great scenes, kind of.
Can I also just say, just before we move on, that I don't fully understand why her not revealing that she knew that she was married to Oscar Isaac was such a big deal.
I literally think there is something in her. Again, I think, okay, so, I mean, Natalie Portman that night who is the character that does tie them all up? And
I just know the actress is Gina Rodriguez.
Okay, yeah, so Gina Rodriguez. But Natalie Portman does see, before she goes to sleep and is confronted by Gina Rodriguez, she's carrying a microscope around with her and looking at slides a lot of this time, Natalie Portman. And she pricks her own blood, kind of, and does see that her own cells are kind of infected with these sort of shimmer cells. And again, we see one of the members kind of very quickly turn into like a flower person, kind of. It's I feel like the shimmer is, you know, it's like enhancing shit, you know? Like if she doesn't, you know, like I don't want to fight, I don't want to continue this journey, zoom, like flower person, kind of. Where the Gina Rodriguez character is denial and aggression, kind of. And like I think that really starts to propel her into just a nonsensical kind of interrogation.
But I don't understand why I guess my point is, why would she not tell them in the first place? Like before they hid in the shimmer, why did she think that was something that was beneficial to hide? Because I don't know what, like, before they go into the shimmer, I don't know what she thought they were going to think if she told them that. Like, the rest of them are going in there for sort of suicidal, destructive reasons as well. Mm-hmm. She has like more of a better reason to want to go. Like, why do they care that she's going in there to save someone?
I mean, right after they watch the DV tape in the mess hall, kind of, Jennifer Jason Leigh does take Natalie Portman aside and says, like, I get it. Now I get, like, why you didn't tell them.
But I think it's more of a thing where, like, you can't tell, once they see the tape, you can't tell them after that.
Right.
But if you had told them before that, then when they see the tape, like, what are they going to think? Like, Natalie Portman wasn't in the shimmer.
Right.
Like, and I don't know. I don't fully understand the logic of that whole thing. So it was hard for me to follow the drama of what they were trying to get us to buy into.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look...
I understand that Gina Rodriguez goes insane because of the shimmer after that, and that's why she ties them all up. But they thought that something bad would happen if they found out before they went to the shimmer, and I don't know what they were thinking.
There's
like,
also...
what was the conclusion the other people are going to come to? Like, your husband like went through a traumatic experience, like we can't trust you. Like,
right,
or
yeah.
Maybe they're thinking she would get infected, but then, like, I mean, there's tests and stuff, like they wouldn't have let her come in. I don't know.
There's something that the movie doesn't talk enough about, where it's kind of, again, when they're all kind of having beers before they go in there, and she is like, you single, like Natalie Portman, kind of. It's kind of like, you know, like, before we go on this suicide mission, like, might as well do this. And like Natalie Portman, it's kind of like this whole thing where, I don't know why I just brought that up, because it is contradicting to what I'm about to say, is after the shepherd gets snatched up by the bear person, there is like a line drawn in the sand where Jennifer Jason Leigh and Natalie Portman want to continue, and the other two are like, okay, I've seen enough. I kind of want to turn back. Mm-hmm. But like, and I think that was, I don't know. That
I understand how it all builds up. So like, I understand why Gina Rodriguez is mad after that, because there has been like these sort of lies that Natalie Portman has been telling, and it's more like, why the bigger story is the cover up here, and I don't know why they felt it was something they needed to cover up.
Right. Well, it's because I think they thought that, again, Jennifer Jason Leigh has this cancer, and they're like, she has a fucking death wish coming in here. And I think maybe they would have thought the same about Natalie Portman, is when they're trying to be like, Natalie Portman, like, talk some sense into her. You want to get out of here too, right? And Natalie Portman does lie. But the rest of them have sort of death wishes too, or they're at least not caring about their own safety. Because they established that in the scene where they're on the river. Oh, definitely. Where they're floating down, where she's like, you know, I lost a daughter, and, you know, part of me died as well, so what do I have to lose? But something definitely changes. The Josie girl, like, you know, she cuts herself to feel alive. She's, you know, using this as a way to kind of feel something in here. Like, again, like... and the other one's a junkie or something.
Yeah, like, it doesn't make full sense with, like if Natalie Portman has something to live for, a husband on the outside, then, like, why is that going against... You know, I don't. No. I think it is. I think Oscar Isaac is just. He's fucking. All of his vital organs are down. Unless she can come in here and find a fucking mystery, or just a fucking miracle cure, kind of. It's kind of like, I think this is just a fucking suicide mission for Natalie Portman, and I think they don't want to be misled by somebody who doesn't have all their cards kind of out on the table. They all have their cards out on the table, and I think they feel betrayed. No, I understand why they feel betrayed. I don't understand why she betrayed them in terms of not telling them. I don't know what, like, if she had told them before, what would they have said? Like, why would they not have wanted her to come with if she had been like, Oscar Isaac is my husband. He's dying. I want to find a cure and get out. No, that's my. I completely understand why they're mad that she didn't tell them, because you have to have all your cards out on the table if you're going on this suicide mission. And then she actively lies after that when, you know, she clearly is trying to get them closer to the lighthouse, right? You know, rather than whatever. And I understand why they go crazy after that, but I don't understand why she wouldn't tell them. And then especially I understand why she won't tell them after they see the DV tape, because then like that looks super weird. And like you're trying to save this guy who like went crazy inside, and you know, maybe, you know, if worse, because that's like the first real information they have about what goes on inside the Shimmer. They have no idea what happened in there, besides he came out in like really poor shape.
Yeah.
So like they don't even have any concept of like she's infected and he was close to someone that was infected, so why would we let her come along with us? Like they have nothing to go on to basically like be biased against her coming along. It was a weird plot point, and so much of the movie was based around it that I couldn't really buy into a lot of it.
No, yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take us on a long tear, but I feel like that's a big building block of the movie is like that whole thing, and they should have at least like if they had an idea in their mind of why that makes sense, they should have made it clear to us.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
And that's why I say stuff about like I think it was the right choice to release this on Netflix and other countries, because there's stuff that doesn't make sense to the American audiences, and if you're someone watching this in another language, you're going to look at that and be like, oh, I'm just missing something because I'm a Spanish person watching this in Spanish, or I'm watching this in Pashto or whatever languages they've translated into.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's a nice it's a good route or flaw to explore, really. No, yeah,
you were going to talk about the bear scene, or you're about to move on to something before I sidetrack.
Yeah, no, it's again, I think these are just much more visually appealing things. Obviously, they're trying to build, but I wish there was something equally as interesting kind of to do around the alligator and different flowers scene. Again, I'm kind of torn about like that.
It was kind of just
decision.
If you hadn't seen the trailer, the alligator would be a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. Because it was a bizarre kind of looking.
But it is also kind of like it's like,
and I love that inside
flower.
of the
it's like
scene.
flowers, fucking like alligator that's trying to kill us, and it's also a shark. Like it wasn't really like a logical progression.
But the flower people are fucking spooky. That really kind of bugged me out.
I liked the flower people until what they did with Tessa Thompson's character.
Right, yeah. That was
because it was really cool
really
and
fast.
it made sense to me when it was like, especially like that's when I started to kind of get into the movie again. Like I was a little unsold on the movie once it like was
takes an hour to get into
meandering
it,
for a while, and then like when Tessa Thompson has the theory of like
the refraction.
The shimmer is a prism, and it's not blocking stuff from getting out. It's refracting it in all these weird ways, and nothing is interacting in here like it should on the outside. So it's kind of like everyone's DNA and genes are all sort of interacting in ways that they shouldn't, and they're defying the laws of physics. And like you have like these flower genes that are getting sort of spliced with human genes. So she says they have like what the Hux or the Hawks gene that basically defines like our actual shape. So the flowers are taking the shape of humans, but they're not actual humans. It's just it's flowers that have that one gene from humans. So then I don't understand why when Tessa Thompson like goes to take like a walk to basically like become one, like she just immediately turns into a flower person.
Right.
Like, again, are they trying to apply that the people that were there before, because they evacuated that place?
No, yeah.
They didn't leave anyone behind there.
No, yeah, and I don't think so. I think it's literally they're trying to imply that there are two different paths to that final shape, or again, she might just be gone by the time she turns the corner. But I think they're definitely trying to imply that.
Well, you can see she starts to turn like plant-like.
In a fucking matter of seconds, it seems like she turns into one of those plant people. So no, that was kind of.
I also hated that for another reason, because like they started setting up like all these backstories for everyone in that one river scene, where they're like, oh, like Josie, like she wears long sleeves because she self-harms, and Natalie Portman's like, oh, is she suicidal? And she's like, no, I think it's the opposite. Like she wants to feel alive, and she's kind of just. Which I thought was a kind of nice line to kind of, I feel like a lot of movies do portray like self-harm as like she's trying to kill herself rather than like she wants to feel something. And like that's kind of an important point. And then I thought they kind of just spat in the face of that, where like they have a really nice moment where she's got short sleeves on and she's, just like kind of free and open. She has her scars out there and she's not afraid of them anymore. And I thought that was going to be something where like inside the shimmer, with everything that's getting fucked up in her mind, something clicked and she doesn't feel that way anymore, and maybe she's happy and now she does want to survive and be on this suicide mission. I thought she was going to want to be the one that's going to be like, no, let's get out of here. I don't want to die anymore. I didn't come in here to like I don't need to be in here anymore.
Like she would make it
to go the opposite way, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go. She wants to die, but she doesn't want to die in a horrific way, and she wants to die in a beautiful flower way. And I thought that was sort of glorifying suicide in a weird way, and it was going against a sort of nice way of looking at self-harm that was more truthful to reality, and it was just kind of a spit in the face of that. And it was also just a dumb plot point because it ruined the cool plot point of like things just interact in weird ways here. Doesn't mean that people are just going to turn into plants like because it's a cool plot point. Like if she did, then why did Natalie Portman turn into plants. Like, because then it
Right.
brings up this whole thing, like, is the shimmer, does it know what people want?
Right.
Like, if Tessa Thompson turns into a plant, then Natalie Portman should. She's right there.
Well,
And if it isn't that, then that's poorly established. The shimmer
Right.
is, magnifying what people are thinking in there.
right. Yeah. But then we also have like a really interesting I don't really have anything to expand upon after that.
What?
Yeah, no, that was just okay. No, but I think this was one of the two things I felt bad almost saying during like Blade Runner 2049, where I'm like, I've never seen anything like this in sci-fi, because like, or in a movie or anything, or in just some sort of concept realized in film like this, because I think there are two really standout scenes in this movie. And obviously one is when the bear kind of returns, who killed Shepard, and in like Shepard's last moments of death as the bear's killing her, it's kind of absorbed that DNA of her screaming for her like life and everything. And then it uses that as a kind of like animals will use something to lure other people in. And I kind of like that the bear,
I like the aesthetic of
yeah.
that. I don't like their justification for what that actually was, because
Okay.
I thought they were leading us towards something different. Because again, they have that beautiful scene where Tessa Thompson is explaining like nothing interacts the way it should here. So
Right.
things are just like getting spliced in ways that don't make sense for nature and aren't even like beneficial really to like nature. And I thought
Right.
that whole scene was supposed to be evidence of like somehow she was getting spliced with the bear DNA. I didn't realize that it was a bear that killed her because it was very unclear. I thought it was like a lion or something that killed her in the first
Okay.
scene. And then she, for some reason, was just getting spliced with the bear DNA. I thought the screaming was because she was still Tess Shepard on the inside, but she's now spliced with this bear thing. And like, it's kind of like these two different DNAs fighting with each other where like, she didn't want to be a fucking bear, but now she is a bear. And she's like, I thought it was like taking this really dark nihilistic
that's
view on like
weird.
sci-fi
Yeah.
of like things aren't going the way they should here. It's not meant to be this way. This comet wasn't supposed to land here and fuck with like the terrestrial DNA of everything here. Humans aren't supposed to be spliced with bears. So when that happens, like it wouldn't just be like, oh, I'm Tesla, I'm a bear now. It would be this like torturous existence of like, I don't understand these instincts that I'm having to like want to go kill something. I don't know who I am right now. And I thought that was just like the representation of that, where like it's still Tessa on the inside, but she's also a fucking bear now, and that's horrible. Like that's just a torturous existence to be this
Right.
bear, and that's why she's still sort of like screaming, and that's why she doesn't try to attack them at first, because it is still sort of her on the inside, but she's fighting with this instinct of like, that's food, I'm the predator, that's prey, but these are
Right.
also my friends. Like I thought that was a much cooler concept than it absorbed her dying essence, and that's her dying screams that we're hearing. Like,
Well, that makes sense to me though, because
does it? Screams aren't DNA. Like, why would it be playing back her screams?
Well, again, I think
Like that
There's-
just
there's-
seemed like a really cheesy sci-fi element to me. Much cheesier than
there
I
has
thought
to
it was
be,
going in
yeah.
this like nihilistic dark view of like there is no like greater purpose here. Something random happened and there's fucked up shit happening here, and there is no like thing that we have to discover. We
Right.
just have to kind of get out of here.
Right. Well, that is how the evolution of, it's like Darwinism. It's kind of like it's something that happens it's Darwinism, but fucking light years sped up. Like, obviously, it's something. It's taking a quality of something that it killed so that it can kill again. You know, it's improving
Well, I understand
upon,
that like
Okay.
larger concept. I don't understand the nitty gritty of like, how do you absorb the DNA of someone's dying screams? Like,
It's alien. It's sci-fi. I mean, it's
that's more of a stretch to me. I don't know. I just thought that, and
Okay.
again, I maybe I set myself up for that by like really buying into like, I was like, oh, this is fucking cool. Like, this is dark.
Right, yeah.
This is like, there's no like greater like message that's going to be a twist at the end of this movie. It's just going to be like, oh, we're in like a fucking nightmare zone where like, anything can happen because all the possibilities, everything are being refracted off of one another. No one's going to be the same person they are when they came in there.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. And then it was just like, I don't know, I thought that was cheesy. Like, the bear bit her throat, so it absorbed her screams. Like,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't defend that. I think that's so stupid.
Well, I mean,
I think the aesthetics of it are cool, but I think the reasoning behind it makes no sense.
I mean, they walked into like a fucking, like an oil reflection in a driveway, and just them being there splits their cells into like rainbow cells. I'm not looking for a whole lot of...
I know, but that still makes sense in terms of like, different... There's no DNA to actually like splice with something else for someone's scream. Like...
Well, if you're...
It's like saying like there's DNA to someone's like thoughts. Like I absorbed their thoughts. Like...
Well...
It's like, it's fusing like, sort of like the metaphysical and the physical.
Right.
In a way that nothing else resembles that in the Shimmer. Everything else is just physical meets physical and bonds in this way of fusing of physical things. And that was the only thing that's like her dying essence fuses with the physicality of this bear. Like it didn't seem like it fit into the world that they're creating or any world, and I don't know that it was a benefit to have it like explained in that way. I feel like there's an easier way to get that same aesthetic across.
Oh, definitely. Right.
Without going to that. I don't know. Once they explained that, I was like, you just ruined a really cool moment for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that was that was interesting. That was kind of like this.
It's terrifying.
It was cool to see like Alex Garland's take on sort of a more traditional, like horror scene. But yeah, let's talk about the other standout scene.
So basically, after that happens, Ventress leaves and is like, I don't care what you guys do. I'm getting to the lighthouse. She's like, the person that leaves the Shimmer, if we wait any longer, it's not going to be the person that came in, and I want to be the person that gets out. So she's basically, trying to fight against time before she goes crazy, because they can all feel that they're sort of going crazy.
Right.
That was something that bothered me at first, and I think made more sense by then, because like she's kind of a different person on the outside.
Right.
And I still don't know if this was even intentional, but then she's different as soon as they enter into the Shimmer, where like on the outside, she was kind of like, just frustrated and like, yeah, I just keep fucking sending people into the Shimmer and they're dying and I don't know what to do about it. And then on the inside, she kind of turns into like the fucking like asshole like commander from like every military movie that's like fucking like, buck up, you pussies. Like, we got to keep going. Like, stop bickering around. We knew the radios weren't going to work in here. Like, she just completely changes her character the moment they step inside the Shimmer.
I think, yeah. I mean, again, I think...
And it can be explained.
They all have
But I don't know if
different...
that's intentional or if that's... Because no one else seems that different as opposed to her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she just seems like, I have cancer. I'm going to die. Let's try to do this as thoroughly as possible, sort of, where there's varying degrees of people involving their emotions in it and everything. But yeah, she goes off to the lighthouse, which is where this all started, where the meteor asteroid landed. And Natalie Portman is sort of caught up by other girl turning into Flower Girl. And eventually Natalie Portman kind of catches up to Ventress at the lighthouse. But when Natalie Portman enters the lighthouse, there's sort of this incinerated person and again, another DV camera. And she watches the DV camera and... Which
amazingly still works.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's...
And how long are the battery lives on those things?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, right.
I mean, I guess they can always explain everything like it's the Shimmer. Nothing works like it's supposed to. And
yeah, or... Yeah, I don't know.
I never got the impression that I think they could have explained it if the whole thing for the Shimmer was like it was this sort of like all-knowing thing,
right.
And it wanted certain things to happen, so it would allow the DV camera to last that long. But I think they explain later that it is kind of just random chance and things are turning out. We'll get into that towards the end of this, but yeah, I'm just listing things that bugged me in this movie that I thought were poorly backed up, like the DV camera's still working. I know it needs to work for the plot to work, but they didn't even try to justify it. It's just on after possibly 12 months. So,
I mean, what's happening on the DV camera is Oscar Isaac essentially is committing suicide with a phosphorus grenade, and he's talking in a weird... I mean, you don't really hear him talk.
He has like a southern accent.
Yeah, he has like a weird southern accent. I didn't get that at all.
I mean, I I looked past that because I think that's one of the evidence of like
just going crazy.
He's been in there for 12
a year.
months. I mean, they all went crazy after what seemed like a couple days. I mean, it turned out to be a couple months after all.
But then he kills himself, and either before or after that we see like
well, before that he's like, I don't know, am I you or are you me? And then he says, find Lena, and then we hear him say, I will. The phosphorus grid goes off, and then his double walks on screen, and we're like, oh, that's who said I will.
Right, yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so she watches that, is obviously fucking freaked out, and then sees the hole in like the lighthouse.
Before we go on, I feel like that reveal was ruined, like we were saying, by the framing of the whole post everything interrogation by Benedict Wong, because at one point she says like, oh yeah, like we were seeing like clones and like doubles of everything.
Oh, really?
And like the moment she says that, you're immediately like, all right, well, they're obviously going to be a clone of a person in here. It's a sci-fi movie. It's hard sci-fi. Like there's going to be some sort of, this is not who you think it is. It's the clone of that person.
Okay.
Like it totally ruined that reveal for me. I don't know. Maybe I was paying too much attention to it, but
yeah, I didn't even,
because I was just like, I was like, when is the double going to show up? Someone's obviously a double.
Right. Yeah. So then, yeah, I don't want to spend too long on this, but
also
she
what that
goes
does
into
reveal is that the Oscar Isaac we saw before is not the real Oscar Isaac.
Right,
It's his double. But yeah, go on.
Right. Yeah, so I don't want to spend too long on this. There's this fucking spooky looking hole in the lighthouse, probably where like the meteor.
Why does she go into the hole either?
Went into it
because she's confirmed that it's not her husband on the outside. It's not her Kane.
Right.
So what is she trying to save at that point? It should just be self-preservation. I don't know.
I mean, at that point, it's fucking... You walked all the way through the shimmer. You're not going to go down that hole?
No. After everything else I've seen in the shimmer,
I think I would go in that fucking... What else do you have to fucking live for?
It's a minor complaint. I know she has to go in the hole for the movie. We have to stretch our imagination a little bit.
So she goes in the hole.
But it is sort of like that horror movie, like, no, don't go in that fucking house. Don't go in that fucking house.
Ventress is in there. Ventress is obviously gone insane.
She's got 6 fingers.
What?
She's got 6 fingers.
Oh, I didn't see that.
You didn't see that? Yeah, she's saying stuff like, it's not like us. She lifts her hand up and it's got 6 fingers.
I actually do remember that.
Might have even been 7 fingers.
And then, she's obviously affected by the shimmer. She has the very cringeworthy kind of state the title of the movie line.
I usually love Jennifer Jason Leigh.
You had something to say about that too with the book, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is spoiler alert for the book as well, which I haven't read. But again, when I finished this movie, I was looking for answers, and we were reading through the plot description of the book, and they changed like everything. Like they never leave the shimmer at the end of the book, or at least Natalie Portman doesn't. But there was this whole sort of subplot line, which would have added a lot of intrigue to this movie,
right,
where basically the psychologist had in her like pre-screening before they all went into the shimmer had sort of installed these like trigger words for hypnosis or other thing, like trigger words for essentially what she wanted them to do via hypnosis. So like she would say, like I think she would say, I can't remember what the phrase was, consolidation of authority, and then they would all go like snap into hypnosis. And it was something that I guess didn't affect Natalie Portman, the biologist's character in the book. So like I guess early on she realizes like everyone else is hypnotized, and she's like, oh, this is not affecting me, I'll act hypnotized or whatever. So then when she finally comes across the whatever her face is, Ventress in there, which again the circumstances of that are different in the book because pretty much everything else is different, but they do have that setting, and she does come across Ventress, and Ventress had also installed a trigger word for suicide via hypnosis that was annihilation. So if she said annihilation, whoever who was affected by that would just kill themselves. So like if things like went haywire, she could just be like annihilation. If someone's about to kill me, annihilation. Right. They go into hypnosis, they kill themselves. So the biologist enters that room, and the psychologist just starts screaming like annihilation, 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 and the biologist is like, no, not affected. Like that's such a really cool like action scene. That's like something out of like a Ridley Scott movie, like at like the end of Alien or something like that.
Right.
And they just completely didn't use that. And then like the way that she says annihilation in this is just not as meaningful. It's literally just the term annihilation. It
isn't. And yeah, and she does say something like complete annihilation, kind of like this shimmer's going to take over the world and it's going to mean like annihilation, kind of. Whereas Natalie Portman in like one of the last scenes is talking when she's being like kind of interviewed or whatever. She says like, no, I don't think it was trying to hurt me. It was just creating something new, kind of, you know? So that was kind of like a weird...
It's contradicting what I think the ending turns out to actually be.
Mismatched kind
and
of
that
thing.
could just be, I mean, again, everything can be explained in this sort of like cheap
crazy,
way of like,
Mm-hmm.
she's crazy. The shimmer has made her think things that aren't actually there.
But, yeah, whatever. But I did cringe with like, name of the movie, dialogue.
Well, and the way she dies in some like Temple of Doom type shit.
Yeah.
Like,
but then
beams of light like exploding out of her body, and
I
could really do without that.
Yeah, I could take it or leave it.
I would have preferred us not see her at all for the rest of the movie.
Right.
Not know where she went.
But
we could have come to any kind of conclusion. It looks like it's an infinite hallway underneath the lighthouse of whatever the fuck is going on there. I didn't need that thread tied off. I needed other threads tied off that we didn't get.
I think they even ask about her like ventress, and she's like, "Did she die?" And she says, "I don't know." But yeah, what's it called? She does say the name of the movie, but that's followed up by fucking 20 minutes of pure visual insanity, because she does fucking spin off into a micro galaxy kind of, and then it sucks like a piece of blood from a cut on Natalie Portman's face, and then essentially what's created is this body double of Natalie Portman, which is a very strange,
it's creepy
scene. And yeah, again, there's no real dialogue really. I will get into like what I think this meant in like my more final thoughts, but there is, I mean, she tries to attack it and attacks her. There's some very troubling imagery of her being like pushed up against the wall by it. I thought that was like really weird, kind of triggering. Like I kind of didn't know it was.
I know what you're talking
happening.
about, but I don't agree that it was that wasn't their intent. I don't think.
Oh no, it definitely wasn't their intent. Well, I think there's a way that it happened where I was like, whoa, that's fucking like some real, I don't know. But yeah, she's able to trick its kind of mimicking her by, I guess there's another phosphorus grenade on the ground that we never really get that kind of...
but the double's the one that picks it up.
Is it?
The double hands it to her, and then she holds it with the double. And then she like pulls the whatever you call it, the pin off of it. And then she walks away while the double's holding it. Here's a whole other thing that we'll get into that I think it's meant to be, because there is a passage of time where like, you know, they come out of the tube, she's facing off in this weird like choreographed, which is actually choreographed. I was looking up, there's this famous like interpretive dancer who choreographed.
I was about to say that looks like modern dance,
and she might even be the person who's in the body double dance. But they're basically like they're mirroring each other's movements, because the body double is sort of like learning from her, and it's created through her. It is literally a clone of her in some way. So they're slightly mirroring each other's movements. She, in order to get away, smacks it with the DV camera. And that's when it starts to become violent, because it's mirroring her violence. Not like action for action, but like emotion for emotion. So when she's confused, she's walking around, then she smacks it with the DV camera. And that's why it like pins her against the wall. Because it's like, well, you just smacked me. I'm mirroring your violence. The only way she's able to get out of that is by like passing out. And then it mirrors her passing out. They pass out together. Then there's a passage of time where I think we're meant to wonder like which Natalie Portman wakes up. You know, did the shimmer, you know, switch their bodies somehow? And there's, you know, the body double Natalie Portman and whatever. And maybe we're not following the real Natalie Portman's character when they wake up.
I mean, even on, I don't buy
that one.
No,
I think we're meant to wonder.
I think Natalie Portman picks up the even on Wikipedia, it says Lena manages to exploit its mimicking behavior and sets an active phosphorus grenade in its hand before
she triggers
fleeing.
it, but I'm
no way. Why would that happen then? Why they're shadowing each other, like, so if it
I'll get
picks
into,
it up,
I'll
they definitely
explain that part
pick it up together
later when I get into my final thoughts.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I can explain it now.
Well, let's wait. Let's wait. Let's go into the whole.
I can remember it very clearly. I mean, I'm open to being wrong about it because I think there's a lot that's weird about this movie, but I'm almost very certain that the body double just kind of pulls the grenade out and then holds it out to Natalie Portman. They hold it together. Natalie Portman with her thumb pulls the trigger off, the pin off. They're both holding it like they're about to mutually commit suicide because they're mirroring each other. And then she tricks it by running away. And then she has like that last look in while it's holding the grenade about to like be blown up. I don't think Natalie Portman picks it up. I could be wrong, but I remember the scene of like the body double holding the grenade and holding it out to her, and then she holds hands with it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I could be wrong, and again, this is why I totally agree that it should have been released on Netflix for other languages, because it's the type of movie where you're like, did I see what I saw?
But yeah, she goes. I know we're spending a long time on this review, and we have Ken waiting to do Black Panther, so I do want to speed it up a little so we can get into final thoughts, because I feel like I have loaded final thoughts that I've been holding out on that I think explain a lot about this movie. But what we do, I feel like the last thing we can talk about is she has this sort of debriefing or whatever.
Well, the phosphorus grenade blows up.
Right.
The thing, whether it's Natalie Portman or the actual double, crawls back into the hole, sets the whole thing on fire. The whole shimmer kind of burns down.
Right.
It's all connected in some way through the shimmer DNA, which that was a little cheesy to me. I don't know.
It's the source.
And then why doesn't Natalie Portman blow up as well? Because she's got the shimmer DNA in her blood as well.
Well, it's also like we have this clone.
I mean, I guess with Oscar Isaac, his character, just the bad stuff goes away.
Oh, I
guess
was
the
about
bad
to
stuff
say,
goes away from, but then it doesn't. Nothing makes sense.
The fucking she gets back, yada yada yada. Oscar Isaac is like, yeah, they're like, well, he's stabilized and he's completely fine now that the shimmer's gone. I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. He's the fucking clone. Like, why would the shimmer be holding him back? I was just kind of like, well, I don't know. Like, but anyway, we have this last shot, which I hate. And we see both of their pupil. First, we see Oscar Isaac's pupil. Well, she says a line that fucking really gets, like, I love this kind of concept. There's like this short story I really love. I'd love to like write into like a screenplay or something. I have actively been doing it, where it's just like, we're changing into other people all of the time. And I think, again, this kind of like builds into my last thing. And she says like, do you think you're the real Kane? And he's like, I don't think so, or whatever. And then they kind of embrace.
Well, he asks her, are you the real Lena? And she doesn't answer. Which again, I think they intentionally are trying to do like the Inception thing of like, does the top stop spinning?
Right.
Or is she the real Lena or is she not? And I think you can interpret it either way. I like the movie if you interpret it one way. I hate the movie if you interpret the other way.
I don't think it's, yeah. But then you see both of their things, their like pupils kind of shimmer, which I think is real fucking stupid if she's supposed to be like the body double or the double that gets out. She's not the original Lena. I could have sworn. I thought she says something about being the real Lena, and then he says something about not being the real.
She
Kane.
asks him first. She's like,
okay.
"Are you the real Kane?" And he says, "I don't think so."
Okay.
And then he asks her in return, "Are you the real Lena?" And she doesn't respond, and they just embrace.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes
They're trying to
more
intentionally,
sense.
because she kind of like breaks down and starts crying. Like,
all right. So let's talk about final thoughts, and we can kind of tie this in with fingers and everything. But tell me your whole. So
I had to look this up. I can't take credit for this. I should have wrote down who interpreted this, although I don't think it really matters because I do think this is what Alex Garland intended.
Okay.
And it's why I wish he would have taken some of the studio. Like, I think the studio wasn't like, oh, we're out for more money. I think the studio was being sort of like the Greek chorus of people watching this movie being like, it doesn't make sense. You need to give the audience a little bit more. Like, you have the purest of intentions and will allow you to make this fucked up dark sci-fi, but you also need to like give a little bit more to audiences. Otherwise, they're going to walk out being like, "What the fuck did I just watch?" And not everyone's going to go look up, what they actually watched. And even like if you do, there was a bunch of stuff that I looked up that didn't fully get it, even though they liked the movie. They didn't nail what I thought the actual interpretation of the ending is supposed to be.
Right.
It's it's the only one that makes sense to me, because I can't imagine Alex Garland putting out a movie after Ex Machina that didn't make as much sense as this interpretation was. But their interpretation was that they all sort of go into the Shimmer being fucked up people who, and I think they pay so much attention to that conversation with the psychologist and Lena about like, we're all sort of self-destructive. It's built into our DNA.
Right.
And I think if you view this movie in a different light, that sort of idea doesn't come back. If you interpret it in a different way, which is that when the clone or with the Shimmer doubles Lena, she's also getting the self-destructive part of her DNA. And when they're first like sort of dancing around each other, there's no ill will, I don't think. I think the choreography is great because it shows that it's not like a threatening character.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't do anything threatening until Natalie Portman acts violent towards her, and then it starts acting violent. When it absorbed Natalie Portman, it's also absorbing her self-destructive behavior. So it's coming to grips with this like idea that like, because I think in that conversation with the psychologist, they talk about like, that's not a natural feeling. Like humans are the only ones that sort of self-sabotage in this way. So like, extraterrestrial creatures don't sort of have that built in. Right. And now it's cloned this human, it's expressing that in this sort of self-destructive way.
Right.
That's why I think that the double picks up the grenade. Because it's expressing that self-destructive, like, let's fucking like kill each other together. Like, this is what I'm feeling as well. I'm mimicking what you're feeling inside of you. And then Natalie Portman is sort of able to like trick it in that way, realizing she wants to get out. She leaves. And that's why they have that sort of last look where she looks inside and it's holding the grenade. Like, where do you do it? Like, this is what we were supposed to do. Like, we were, I was mimicking what you were doing. And then I think it's very intentional that we see it morph back into the body double. Because I think we're supposed to know that it is Natalie Portman that gets out. It's the body double that goes back inside. Tied into that is that she also gets a portion. She's not the same person when she leaves. She gets a portion of the Shimmer with her, which doesn't have this like self-destructive idea with it. That's why she wants to leave and not kill herself. And she ends up getting out. So then when she sees Kane in the end, she's not the same person she was before, who wanted to self-sabotage their marriage, who wanted to have an affair. And Kane is not the original Kane from before either. And I think she's realizing like, I want to give this a better chance. I think I can make this work. I'm not the same person before. Right. So that's why, even though it's not the same Kane, she embraces him because she's like, I'm kind of been given a second chance here. I can make this work, and I'll be better this time around. And I think that's why they show the Shimmer. I think it's misleading. And this is, again, why I agree with the Paramount executives who are like, you need something else here. Not everyone's going to get this. I clearly didn't get it until I read someone's interpretation of this. They're showing the Shimmer in her eyes to show that she's different, so that she's not going to fuck up this time around. She's not going to be self-destructive. She's going to try and work on a marriage that actually works with this Kane person. And then we see the Shimmer in his eyes because obviously he's not the same Kane from before. He's a different one, but she's willing to give it a try. But you could also interpret that as when I interpreted it walking out of the movie, right. I thought it was kind of like the ending to Life, where it was like the creature was smarter, like the Shimmer was smarter. It does want to annihilate everything. Right. And them hugging is like, oh, we fooled them. Now we're on the inside. And we can we let the Shimmer go, but now the better plan is to from the inside destroy everything out by getting back to the rest of Earth. And we can infect them that way, which is a really cheesy ending. But I think if you interpret it the other way, it kind of saved the movie a little bit for me. I still have a lot of qualms with this movie, but that ending I thought was actually really sweet. And it ends up, if you look at it that way, that does tie up a lot of like the affair, that ties up their obsession with like self-destruction that they're always talking about in this movie. And I do think that's the intended interpretation, but I don't think it's made obvious. And I think that's a fault of the movie. And I think they should have been more willing to take notes, because I don't think Paramount was like, we need to make more money. We need to put more asses in the seats. I think Paramount was like, I want to make a better movie with you, and you don't have the best product on the screen. You're trying to be too cool and subtle and nuanced, and you're not putting out something that is fully understandable by a majority of audiences.
And that's
or even a small minority of audiences, really.
And that's kind of another thing that bothers me about this movie. Like, how many times did we need like Natalie Portman to like walk up to like a wall or like fungus or whatever and be like, it's like a tumor. Yeah, thanks, Natalie. You've said that already, and it's fucking so on the nose. We get it. Mm-hmm. We have imagery. We don't need you to like vocalize it to the camera as well. And then meanwhile, you have scenes like that. You have scenes like the kind of DV tape of Oscar Isaac and his body double, and the whole fucking nonverbal like 20-minute like last or one of like near the end scene kind of where it really trusts the audience to be like, okay, this is what's happening. And then again, we have, you know, what's his name playing like the clumsy, like, fucking just like, hey, what do you want the audience to know? You know, like, I want the audience to know this. And he's like, very good. This is a narrative device. Let's cut back into the adventure. Okay, yeah. Like, you know, like it's just, it's a really like, it goes from black to white sometimes in this movie with just the writing. It has to just, it's the writing.
Yeah, and then when you have like the crocodile scene with that only like, I was surprised to read that Mike note of that the studio didn't really get any say, and that Scott Rudin was just kind of like, yeah, I have final cut. We're going to make this cool sci-fi movie that me and Alex Garland want to make. Because like that crocodile scene seems like something that the studio put in. Like, we need like a studio thrill here. Like, we need like a set piece of, all right, here's the nature thrill that they have to fight with. Some little bit of danger to throw in here.
I did read briefly, I just want to launch into my thing real quick. I did read briefly that a small piece that somebody wrote just comparing the book and the movie or whatever. And from what I understand, depression and like self-destruction are like gigantic themes in the book and everything. And I think a lot of this can be taken more metaphorically. Like the scene of Natalie Portman's copy or whatever. It's like this depiction of depression where depression is mirroring your every action, but when you try to get it away, it attacks you. Or self-destruction.
Well, it's kind of like you're getting in your own way was the way that I heard it. That I really got behind.
Yeah, and then that's the self-destruction aspect, is that you're getting in your own way, and depression is, you know, again, smothering yourself. Which, again, they had to know that imagery is like very reminiscent of just rape. Yeah. Yes, and I think that was. I think
it was on everyone's mind watching that.
It was very disturbing. And again, with those two things, it can seem like it's a copy of yourself, like a copy of your former self, kind of walking through life now, especially if you're going to endure like some sort of tragedy or everything, which brings me to my next point of, did any of this really happen? Did Oscar Isaac ever really come back? You know, like you kind of have to take that kind of like Swiss Army Man approach that we took at some point. Like, did Oscar Isaac like die in the line of duty, or even worse, like just never come back kind of without word? Like, did he go on some like secret like operative like thing where it's just kind of like, you know, like people who are so deep in the shit in the army, kind of like when they die, like their loved ones never know, you know, they never find out. And is this something that happened? Because this movie, I think, is ultimately about change, like an external representation of this sort of like malignant fucking like mutating feeling that comes with change. And again, like the reflection of what that looks like, to the point where you feel like you're being replaced with, like, again, an empty version of yourself. So was a lot of this metaphorical for like the loss of her husband and the guilt of like infidelity? Then there's like also like the whole kind of like metaphor for the shimmer of like these people who have this desperation to go on this suicide mission. Like, again, it's kind of like this metaphor of like, why do people keep feeding themselves to this shimmer? You know, like, why do people keep going in? It's kind of like, why do people keep like feeding themselves to this depression, to this sickness, to this mental illness, kind of like when they know it's self-destructive, but they do it anyway. And I liked a lot of that, just kind of as a metaphor, which is, I go back and I kind of forgive, like, oh, okay, if it is like that, I don't think I needed to see like an infrastructure of like a government entity, kind of, because this is all such a surreal film. Yeah, and that's a lot of what I got from it, and why I liked it, and why I think I was maybe a little more forgiving of a lot of things that happened. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say. I don't know. The movie just shows that we're all changing, and again, it's like, when do you stop being you? Like, I love like themes like that in movies. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. Again, just random kind of thoughts. Like, I love the kind of like Apocalypse Now-esque exploration of them going into like a place that nobody's ever returned from. There's something else I wanted to say. But yeah. Yeah.
You got a rating?
Yeah.
Tough one.
I've thought as high as 4.5, and I've thought as low as 3. I think I'm gonna land at 4, just because I'm so. I'd love to say that I like go about this podcast being like unbiased and like it's not true. I mean, I think both of us give sometimes selfish scores. It was like kind of like when I was freaking out about like the kind of like, they're not going to invest in any more sci-fi movies, and this was such like a refreshing movie to see. Like, I saw this movie and I think I had a completely different theater experience than you, because I kind of wanted to like clap at the end. I was just kind of so taken. I had no idea what I was walking into. I got like really fucking like amped by a lot of the concepts in this film. I don't know. It was just, we were exploring like these literal like alien concepts that we can't even really encapsulate as a human. And so like even the movie kind of had to handle in like this dreamlike state. I think it was also like this effective character study. It was a little provocative. Again, just like Ex Machina, it was like a genre movie, and I don't know, I liked how cerebral it was. Yeah, so I'm gonna end on 4. 4 is fair for me. What about you?
So I was similarly torn in a different way, not on as wide a scale as 3 to 4.5. I think just because I love Ex Machina so much that, like, even just on the strength of that film alone, I have a lot of faith in Alex Garland. I think I forgive some stuff in this movie just because I don't think... Like, I think he was taking chances and was maybe just a little too close to the material and couldn't step back and be like, how are people going to view this that haven't been, like, obsessing over this for the past, 2 or 3 years, or who haven't read the book before that I'm about to sort of mutate into this 15% version of it.
Right.
I think on the other side of it, I had really high expectations for it, and I was really let down by it. And that sort of, like, I think I ended up disliking it more because of how high my expectations were. Like, I was holding it to a very high standard. And that was, so I'm torn between like being more forgiving because it's Alex Garland, or being more scathing because it is Alex Garland. And he put out Ex Machina, which is just, I think, perfect in every aspect. So tight, so concise, so visually stunning, and while also being, like, it just tickles your mind to think about some of the concepts in Ex Machina.
Yeah.
And, they don't bring up any themes unintentionally. And in this, it's a little sloppier. It's a little more spread out. It's clearly not as tight of a concept, nor a script, nor character development. And then even some of the, like, there's some really great special effects in this that are like great. I watched it at Regal Cinemas, which I feel your pain about going to Regal. I think they do not have the great, like, theater experience at Regal. Like, the audio is not as great. I don't think the screens are as great at Regal theaters.
Yeah, see, I have 2 different Regal theaters, and I think one is like the best theater I've ever gone to, and one's the worst theater I've ever gone to. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, so I feel like I was getting sort of the short end of the stick that way visually. But then there are some scenes that just didn't look like they were really pulling their weight. And then I think it's just the ending is like, I appreciate that they took a lot of risks in this movie. They did some things that I've never seen anywhere else before, but they also hurt themselves in the ways that they either tried to explain stuff or just straight up didn't explain stuff, or it just went in a lot of weird directions. I'm going to land on a 3. I liked some stuff about this. I think viewing the ending through that way that I read about saved the movie a little bit for me. But like, I can't really recommend this movie to anyone, because even someone like me who would typically enjoy a movie like this was disappointed by it. And then I think the general public would just be completely turned off by some of the risks that the movie takes.
Yeah.
I had such high expectations for it. I was just really let down. And I think anyone who watched Ex Machina and came into this is going to be let down in a similar way, unless you're like trying to be extremely forgiving of some of the faults of this movie. I like hard sci-fi. But I also think there's been this really great trend in sci-fi recently of like really inserting a great personal storyline that even if you take all the sci-fi elements out, there's this great either character development or personal struggle that's going to happen and be overcome in the course of the movie that could work if it was just a regular drama on its own. You know, we saw that in Arrival, less so in Interstellar, but in Interstellar it works because the personal storyline is so interwoven into the actual plot of the sci-fi that it's a huge integral part of it. And I feel like they weren't able to really capture that, although I think they were trying for that in this movie, and I think they kind of failed. So I'm going to land on 3 fingers. I'm a little disappointed by this. Overall positive experience, because I think some of the risks are so big and some of the visuals are so crazy. And there's just stuff that I've seen in this that I've never seen in other movies before. But very close to giving this like a 2.5 or a 2.
Yeah,
I couldn't have gone higher than 3.5. I could have gone as low as a 2.
See, I don't even really like. Again, Arrival wasn't like, it didn't floor me like a lot of people did, and then I don't know. This film is caught between wanting to be a blockbuster for the first half, and then in the second half, it wants to be something like Under the Skin, which I think is one of the best sci-fi movies that have ever been made.
I feel like it wants to be like 2001 at one point.
Oh, definitely.
Where it just wants to be like, here's like a 20-minute wordless sequence and you're just along for the ride and interpret what you want.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's, So
anyway, that'll come out to 3.5 fingers. Yeah, I don't know what we gave Black Panther last week because we're going to record that after this, so it's going to fall somewhere on that spectrum. But what else we got before we hop out of here? Oh, I never read the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm so bad at this every week. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 86% based on 161 reviews and an average rating of 7.6 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, Annihilation backs up its sci-fi visual wonders and visceral genre thrills with an impressively ambitious and surprisingly strange exploration of challenging themes that should leave audiences pondering long after the end credits roll. I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, if you agree or disagree with our interpretations as we've reported them on this podcast, please leave a comment on SoundCloud, YouTube, hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, website, email, wherever you're finding out about this podcast. We would love to continue the conversation that's been way too long about this movie. You can go back and watch the handies from a week and a half ago if they're up. If in the future I can get my computer back and finish editing them.
If God grants Mike power.
Yeah. Literally power. And if you can go back and watch our Oscar pregame and our Oscar predictions, rather, and Oscar wrap-up episodes. But yeah, we're pretty much moving on completely with the year 2018 in film. So that's the last little remnants of 2017, and then we'll keep moving on to Avengers, Star Wars, all the big crazy blockbusters that are coming out early in the year 2017 or film year 2017.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you guys next week for which movie I do not know yet.
Yeah, it's up in the air.
Whatever the blockbuster box office determines. So we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Bye.